Hello and welcome to Bubba's Game Reviews. I'm Bubba, and today I'm going to be reviewing the game Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut for PC. Ghost of Tsushima came out in 2020 on the PS4, and I have been patiently waiting for a PC port ever since then. It was the one game that I had hoped probably the most would come from PS4 to PC, and it's finally here. I want to tinker with the review format a little bit, and it might hit me with a copyright claim, but I'm gonna call this one the good, the bad, and the in-between. So let's get into my review for Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut. The good. The campaign is awesome. You play as a samurai named Jin Sakai, who is almost killed while unsuccessfully fighting an invasion of Mongols on the Japanese island of Tsushima. During this fight, most of the island samurai are killed off, with any that remain either being captured, gone into hiding, or turning into Straw Hat Ronin. Jin is saved by a woman named Yuna, who teaches him the ways of stealth and assassination. It's through these methods that Jin must fight back against the Mongol forces on Tsushima in an effort to save his homeland. These fighting methods are not approved by the Samurai Code or Jin's uncle, who is the ruler of Tsushima, because they are dishonorable tactics. These methods, however, prove effective and earn Jin the eventual nickname of the Ghost. During the initial attack on Tsushima, your uncle is kidnapped by the Mongol leader named Khotan Khan, and while you fight him in the beginning of the game, he throws you off a bridge and leaves you for dead. Again. One of the major themes in GOT is honor. What is honor, what it means to be honorable, and just how many people have thrown away their honor in pursuit of revenge or sacrifice is the major story theme. Jin has to wrestle with this concept throughout the entirety of the game, along with the consequences of his actions in relation to his own honor. Tsushima is a fairly large map. It's broken up into 3 different sections, each one with its own things to unlock and explore. All of these collectibles and secrets make Jin stronger in some way, so it is well worth your time to clear the fog off of the map to find the hidden shrines, fox dens, etc. to upgrade your character. There's also a lot to find in terms of cosmetic items, and those items can be earned through exploration, writing haikus, and other hidden ways. The best way to clear the fog off the map is to find the Mongol outposts and liberate them. After clearing off every Mongol outpost in the different acts of the game, the map clears up and shows you every side item you can find, with the exception of some vanity items and collectible clan banners. I completed everything in the base game with the exception of the banners and Mongol artifacts. At some point, a new island appears, and you can go into the expansion called Iki Island. As of this review, I have only just started Iki Island, so I won't be taking that into consideration while reviewing this, outside of saying that it exists and it adds more value to the game by existing. Immersion is a huge selling point for Ghost of Tsushima. There's barely any HUD in this game, and any in-game waypoints and markers only show up when you're close to that waypoint. Otherwise, you'll be using the wind to guide you in the general direction of your objective. Birds will show up to guide you the way to a hidden item, fireflies will guide you to collectibles, and foxes will guide you to fox shrines that upgrade your charms. It's all brilliantly implemented in a way that removes most HUD elements. The only real HUD you'll see is when you're in combat, and you can see health and resolve as well as your tactical items and stances. Combat is something that I would say is pretty easy to learn, but even by the end of the game, I was still messing it up every now and then. I wouldn't say that there's anything super spectacular about the combat in this game. It's good, but it doesn't do anything super different. Essentially, it boils down to this. You have a basic attack and a heavy attack and some combos in between. There are 4 combat stances that you can swap between on the fly once you've unlocked them, and each stance will do more damage to its appropriate enemy type. There's a stance to deal with sword and shield guys, a stance for spears, a stance for swords, and a stance for the big Chungus guys. Each enemy has its own defense meter. If you do heavy attacks to the enemy, it'll fill up a gauge that will break the enemy's defenses once it's full, and the enemy will become staggered. Using the right stance will fill that meter up faster. So swapping stances is a neat addition, but you're really just doing the same thing in each stance and really only benefiting from a damage increase to that enemy type. Hitting light or heavy attacks is the main combat mechanic. There is a big emphasis on parrying attacks and hitting perfect parries that will leave enemies open to a huge counter that might instantly kill them, but that's about it. Like I said, it's nothing spectacular or really all that compelling, but it's still very fun. What is neat and compelling is the standoff mechanic. If you approach a group of enemies, you have the ability to do a standoff, which will make Jin call out the leader of the group to a duel. That leader will come up, you'll hold a button and wait for that enemy to attack. Once they attack, you release the button and Jin will swing his katana out from his sheath, scabbard, saya, I think, and kill the enemy in a single stroke. This can be chained to kill multiple enemies through upgrades, and it's a fun mechanic as enemies start to try and fake you out to make you swing early. If you mess it up, they will hit you and leave you with 1 health. Health and ghost abilities cost a resource called Resolve that you can spend as you fight. You can regain Resolve in a few ways, but most frequently will be when you kill an enemy. I also like the ghost abilities that are unlocked as you progress. The ghost can unlock certain abilities like dashing forward and slashing, an ability that lets you dart to 3 enemies and potentially one-shot each of them, one that sets your sword on fire, and a few others. These are fun additions to the combat that do help to elevate it. There is ranged combat with bows being exactly as you would expect them to be. There are 2 bows you can use from the longbow variant to a short bow variant, each with their own unique arrows. The longbow can headshot enemies that are wearing helmets but takes a longer time to draw, while the short bow can deal with most everything else and is faster. Throwables can be used to disorient or stun enemies and sometimes even kill groups of them. These can be combined with the game's stealth mechanics to move people around to where you want them to be and even take down enemies all while hiding from them. Stealth is another one of those things that is a bit of a mixed bag for me, but overall it's pretty good. For me, it's standard modern gaming stealth. There's tall grass everywhere for you to hide in, there are bells and throwables to mess with enemies, and detection mechanics that are essentially just a bar that fills up above an enemy's head before they notice you. It works, but honestly, it could be a little better. The enemy AI is, of course, really dumb, like in all games with this type of setup. They'll see a dead body, alert everyone, and then patrol for a few minutes before going right back to what they were doing. Combat and stealth can be modified with your armor as well as with charms that you can collect. Armor sets have their own bonuses that can be unlocked by upgrading them, and there are charm slots that can modify things like how much health you have, how long it takes for enemies to see you when you are trying to stealth, and a whole lot of other things. Building your character out how you want them to be is a big part of the game. Also, the resources that you can gather to upgrade everything are everywhere, and you really don't need to do a ton of looking around to find them. Heck, I maxed out how much I could carry on some items just by exploring all the little side collectible things. So that's the meat and potatoes of the game, combat and stealth. Those are the 2 things you'll be doing the most, and they are both fairly standard, but executed very well. Audio in the game is phenomenal. The actors have done a wonderful job of bringing their characters to life, and the music is very good with traditional sounds and styles. Graphics are pure cinema. This game has an art style and direction that the devs were clearly shooting for, and they absolutely nailed it with a bullseye. Graphical fidelity is quite stunning in most scenarios. That opening shot of Jin riding his horse through the field of flowers near the beginning of the game is pure beauty, and there are so many other locations that have that level of care and love put into them. There were so many moments where I stopped just to look at the scenery. However, there are some parts that if you really want to nitpick, you can. Some of the texture work can be a bit under par in some areas, and the water is particularly flat and kind of bad in most cases, but that doesn't ruin the overall style and direction of the game. I can overlook water that isn't great. I also love that there's a Kurosawa mode in the game that turns the entire thing into a black and white homage to those samurai movies of old. I have around 56 hours into the main game, with a few hours into multiplayer and maybe an hour on Iki Island, totaling my playtime to around 60 hours so far. I'm not even close to being finished with the extras. The game ran smooth as butter. I have the graphics maxed out with DLSS and frame gen turned on, and I was hitting a consistent 110 to 144 FPS at 1440p resolution. I'm running a 4070 and an i7 13700K. with 64 gigs of RAM. There are some areas that dip to the 90s for some reason, but it was really only a few small areas. This seemed to be a very well optimized game. Once you're finished with the main story, there's the Iki Island questline and multiplayer for you to dive into. Multiplayer is made up of mostly co-op play modes with a few variations to keep things fresh. There are story-based missions that have you complete objectives, each having different difficulty levels. There are wave-based survival levels that are centered around staying alive for a certain number of waves and holding 3 different control points from enemies. A PvPvE competitive mode against other players that is like Gambit from Destiny, where you fight normal AI enemies. When they die, they drop a token that can be turned into a shrine that will keep score. Whoever reaches the final score and holds off some bosses first wins the game. There are also raids that I haven't done yet because, well, I'm not a high enough level. There are at least 4 characters you can choose from, each having their own abilities, skills, gear, and levels. Power is based on gear score, but each character also has a level system that unlocks different things as you rise through the ranks. Better gear means more damage, and you earn that gear through playing the game. Multiplayer is much more limited in terms of how OP you really are. In the campaign, you can get charms that allow you to heal outside of combat, but that's not the case here. Your sword is also limited to only having one stance based upon which sword you have equipped, and you can't swap between stances without switching swords. There are a ton of unlockable items that you can get just by playing the game and completing challenges, and I also haven't seen a store for microtransactions. I imagine you could probably spend 100 hours in multiplayer alone and still not have everything unlocked. The bad. There really isn't anything about Ghost of Tsushima that is bad. There are some minor annoyances that I'll get to in a moment, but the only thing that I would call just bad is the forced PlayStation Network integration. If you want to play online, you must make a PSN account and link it to your Steam. In reality, what does this do for you in game? Nothing. It lets you play online, sure, but we don't need a PSN account to do that. Helldivers 2 proved it. All it actually does is let you access the PSN menu while you're in the game. That's it. You can see your trophies and stuff. It's a really stupid move from Sony and it needs to be removed. The worst part is that it looks like they're forcing it even into single player games now with God of War. So all that stuff about only needing a PSN account for multiplayer games was a freaking lie. Sony, please sort your stuff out. The in-between. The in-between section is all about things in the game that aren't necessarily good or bad. They are things that might just be okay, but could have had more added to them to make them better. It might also include some minor annoyances that I found that aren't bad overall, but pricked at me enough to warrant bringing them up. Here we go. The price is $60. I could see an argument being made that the game costs too much for being a 4-year-old game that is realistically just being ported to a new platform. I would not argue against you for making that point. Personally, I'm not bothered by the price considering the amount of content there is, but each person may feel differently on this, and that's why I'm bringing it up. At launch, the standoff mechanic was bugged and sometimes wouldn't let you ready your sword at all. This would leave you standing there waiting for the enemy to attack and immediately put you at a disadvantage because you had no other option but to lose. It seems that by now this has been patched, but this was an issue at launch. Enemy variety I feel is lacking, but enemies do become more armored and stronger in the campaign. Both multiplayer and Iki Island introduced some new enemies along with some new mechanics on how to fight those enemies at the very least. I also felt that the stealth needed more stealth mechanics. Not having the ability to move bodies around and hide them is a big oversight in my opinion, and it would have made stealth a bit deeper. There's also no way to grab a living enemy and drag them to another area to assassinate them. For a game that is so darn beautiful, there's also no use of light and shadows to make yourself harder to see while sneaking. These are things that I think could have deepened the stealth system considering they've been in other samurai / ninja games in the past. Look up the Tenchu series. Sometimes assassinations will be very picky about letting you do them. If I'm off by just a millimeter, the assassination icon will not show up and I'll just swing my sword at the enemy, alerting everyone to my presence. It's weird. The chain assassination mechanic is also very weirdly done. I've been caught and had enemies alerted to my presence by the people I'm assassinating. Chain assassinations will almost always alert the other people in the chain because there's no real quick way to kill more than one person at a time. The other people in the chain will almost always see you, which fills the alert meter, and I've had a few times where the third guy in the chain gets a yell out before I can kill him. Kind of ruins the point of doing the chain assassination. Shoji assassinations, I think, are super cool, but are one of the weirdest design decisions in this game. If I'm going to assassinate someone through a door while playing stealthily, why the heck would I ever do it like this? It's loud, destructive, and people will obviously see what you've done. In this clip, I'm doing this in a multiplayer mission to show how it's done, and the bodies in multiplayer disappear when they die, so the enemies won't find them. In the campaign, the bodies stay, so of course everyone else sees the giant hole in the door and the body sitting inside of it. Other games have done this better by just ramming your sword through the door and making the enemy fall over with the door still closed. This lets the body stay hidden and doesn't give everyone a giant neon sign that says "body here." Traversal mechanics can feel clunky and inconsistent at times. Climbing is fine, but trying to get off of a ledge without jumping is a pain. Jin will walk to a ledge, stand there, and then walk off. It's to keep the player from accidentally falling off a ledge to their death, but many times it just hinders my stealth play. If I want to roll off of a cliff to a lower area, I can't. I have to go to the edge, manually jump off, or wait for Jin to do it. I don't want the delay, just let me fall off. The grapple hook is nice, but it sometimes feels inconsistent. I don't think there was a time where I could just throw the thing up without having to jump first, and I hate that. If I'm hanging off the side of a cliff and I want to throw the grapple up to a tree stump above me, I have to jump first and then throw it, and it makes for some awkward animations in my opinion. Same thing if I'm trying to swing from a tree. It seems there are very specific distances and spaces in which the grapple icon will appear, and half the time, I'm not in them. So instead of just throwing the grapple, climbing up, and swinging from the tree branch, I may have to sneak around a corner, climb the rock from a specific spot, then throw the grapple and swing. It really inhibits my own creativity with the movement, and I wish it were more open. And that's pretty much it. I love this game. It's as good as I had hoped it would be, and then some. I'm glad that I still have more content to dive into because I'm not done and I want more. I have to give Ghost of Tsushima's director's cut for PC a 9 out of 10 for some of those minor annoyances I mentioned above, and because of the annoying forced PSN BS that I don't like. I don't like it when other companies do it, and I don't like it here, especially when Sony has lied and been inconsistent with it. Remember, this score only applies to the main game and some of the multiplayer because I haven't done the Iki Island expansion yet, so it's only the main game. Regardless of what Sony does, Sucker Punch made an absolute priceless gem of a game, and they should be absolutely commended for what they created. So that's it. Thank you all for watching my review. I'm not sure what's coming up next, but I'd like to dip my toe into some gaming news, guides, as well as more reviews. I'll see you all in the next video.